In today's video, let's talk about routing in Yii2 basic template and understand how the URLs are generated in the background. So if you look at the default homepage of our basic template, we have 4 links. We have the home page, we have the about page, contact page, and login page. And here we have our logo, which is also a link. So if we click our home page here, let me just click it, you can see our route here has some values. So let's try to understand what is going on in this URL. So we have our entry point, which is index.php, which I'll show you in the code later. But we have our entry point. So this is the file that is used as our entry point for the website. And then the rest here we have the route, which is being defined in more details. So here we have the controller, and the next one is the action inside the controller. So actually here it is, site is the controller and then index is the action. So if I try to just use /s here, which will be site then /index. So it is just the same it is just the same route as the one that was there previously. So if we go to the about page, we can see a slight change here where we have the same controller but we have a different action, which is about. And then if we just continue, we have the contacts page, which has a different route, which is where we have the controller as site and the action as contact. And the last one would be the login, where we have site as the controller and then login as our action. So this is the syntax of how our routes will be looking in most of our projects, but we can use a slight change. If you see that we have a long route, you can replace it with a placeholder. You can decide to use a custom route, which will actually override this one, which you are being given by Yii2 basic template by default. So this is actually the easiest way you can understand how this works. So what I'm going to show you right now is going to the actual code and see how it is being defined there. So here we have, I talked about controllers, site controller. So here is where we have all our controllers. So on the side we have a directory called controllers. So just click that and then we'll have our site controller. So if we click the site controller, we can see we have a lot of things going on here, but don't worry about that. What we're interested in is the actions inside this controller. So this controller has all the actions that are responsible for all the pages that we have just seen. So for example, we have the index page, which is actually the home page. So here we have the action called index. If we use render, we are going to display a page. So here we are displaying a page called index, and this page actually is located in a different place. So let's say this controller is actually it's like a glue. It is connecting different things so that we can just have the final product. This action is responsible for displaying the index page. So if we go to where we have the views, so here is where we have all the code that is responsible for the display in the browser. So here we have different directories depending on the controller. So if we had a controller called home controller, we'll have a directory here inside the views, which is called home. Okay, all the pages that are going to be displayed using the home controller are going to be stored inside the home directory. So in our case, we have the site controller. So all the code, all the pages that are going to be displayed using the site controller are going to be stored inside this site directory. So you can see we have the about page, we have contact page, we have error page, which is actually a different file, but don't worry about that. Then we have the index.php and also login.php. So in our case, we just looked at the site controller where we have the action index. So this is the page that is responsible for the home page, the index page. So what you have just seen in the home page is all here. As you can see, we have successfully created. So this is actually the home page. And then if we just continue with the rest, we have our action login. The same way we have a file called login. So this is the login page, which has the form and everything that we have just seen inside that page. And what you can just see inside the login, it is performing some other things, which don't worry about that. We'll talk about them later. But what it is doing here, it is just displaying the login page as the final product. And then if we just continue, we have the action logout. Don't worry about that. So we have the contact and action about. So let's just try to create our own action so that we can display our own page here. So in this case, I'm just going to create a new action. I'll just call it as hello. I'm just going to render a page called hello. So just return. Page called hello. So I'm returning a page called hello, but we don't have it inside the site directory. So I'm just going to create a file called hello. So new file, hello.php. So in this file, I'm just going to write a simple HTML using the h1 tag. So I'm just going to use h1, and then so this is our page that I've just created, and let's see how it looks in our browser. So if we try to go to our new action that we've just created, which is it was inside site controller, and then we called it as home. Hello, actually it was hello. And you can see we have our page. What we just wrote inside that view file is being displayed. So meaning we have used the right controller and also we have used the right action to display this page. So the last thing that I'm going to share with you is about changing this URL, since it looks complex, but you can make it easier to read for a user. So I'm going to enable pretty URL. That is just a feature inside Yii2 that is being used to make the URL more readable to the user. If you want to enable pretty URL, just go to the config directory and we have the web.php file inside there. So what you're going to do, just scroll down and you'll find where we have urlManager, and just uncomment. That's all you need to do. So we have just enabled pretty URL. So if we go to our browser, we can see the syntax has just changed and it's more clear for someone to read. So let's see what changes are made when we refresh this page. Well, let me just go to a different route. Yeah, you can see now we don't have the index.php, we just have forward slashes. So meaning we have, at least we can see this URL is more user friendly. If we go to contact, login, homepage, my application, you can see now it is much cleaner. Yeah, so the last thing we're going to check is, instead of writing site / then index, we're going to use /home. So let's go and do that. All the configurations are going to be made under the URL manager, and if you look at the rules here, here's where we're going to define the actual words that we're going to use on the URL. So in this case, I'm going to replace the site / index, like let's say that is the home. So what I'm going to use to replace it with home, and the actual URL that I'm replacing is site and then index. So this is the actual URL that I'm changing. So that the next one will be contact, and the actual value for the contact that we are replacing is site and then contact. I think these two are enough for demonstration. So if I try to refresh the home page, let's just see what changes with. And you can see if I use home, the actual URL changes. It has replaced the home. If I go to about, or let's just say contact, and you can see if I use contact instead of the original one, we are just getting the same page. So if I just click home, we are getting the home. About, I didn't change the about URL, so it's just the same. If I go to contact, we have our new custom name that we used. So if I go to login, I did change that, so it's just the default one. So you can see we can play with this URL the way you want. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.